Picture this. We are stepping into the atmosphere of a tense 1970s investigative thriller. The world is changing rapidly, monumental secrets are buried deep within ancient, impenetrable institutions, and suddenly, a completely bizarre historical claim breaks right through the noise to captivate an entire nation. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack one of the most astonishing, deeply hidden, and frankly unbelievable technological claims of the 20th century. We are looking at an alleged machine hidden away within the Vatican, a device that didn't just record history, but supposedly allowed its creators to look directly into the past. So let's go back to May 2nd, 1972. The Italian magazine La Domenica del Corriere hits the newsstands, and it absolutely stops the nation dead in its tracks. The headline boldly proclaims that a machine to photograph the past has finally been invented. But the article actually went much further than just making a wild claim. Inside, it featured this grainy, agonizing photograph of a man's face crowned with thorns. And the claim they made? They said this wasn't some clever painting, it wasn't a dramatic theatrical recreation. The magazine claimed this was a direct, authentic snapshot taken directly from the year 33 AD. An actual photograph of Jesus Christ during his final moments on the cross. I mean, it sounds entirely impossible, right? Like pure science fiction. But the story of how this image supposedly came to be, well, that's where things get truly fascinating.
Section 1. The Secret Architects. Now, the absolutely crucial point to understand here is that the man behind this shocking photograph wasn't some fringe conspiracy theorist. He wasn't a science fiction writer just trying to sell his latest novel. This was Father Pellegrino Ernetti. And yes, he was a Benedictine monk, but he was also a highly respected physicist and a world-class authority on archaic music. He was a deeply, deeply respected intellectual. Ernetti claimed that for decades, he hadn't just been working alone in some dusty monastery cellar. Far from it, he claimed he had been operating in strict secrecy on a massive, highly coordinated scientific endeavor.
Ernetti's team was, quite honestly, nothing short of staggering. He claimed to have assembled a secret dream team of 12 world-renowned scientists, and we are talking about absolute titans here. We're talking about Enrico Fermi, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who famously created the world's first nuclear reactor. We're talking about Wernher von Braun, a man universally recognized as the father of modern rocket science. And crucially, this entire operation was allegedly backed and fully funded by the Vatican itself. Let's just take a moment to emphasize the gravity here. Having heavyweights like Fermi and von Braun involved means we are looking at a project with unimaginable intellectual firepower. And together, they called their creation the Chronovisor.
Now, when we hear about machines looking into the past, our minds almost immediately jump to a Hollywood time machine, right? We think of spinning dials, flashing neon lights, and people being physically transported through the fabric of time to accidentally step on a butterfly. But Ernetti's concept was entirely different from that. The Chronovisor was a purely observational tool. Think of it less like a vehicle and more like a lens, a specialized window designed to peer through the fabric of time without ever physically disturbing it.
Section 2. The Physics of Ghosts.
To really grasp how the Chronovisor actually functioned, or at least how they claimed it functioned, we have to go back to Ernetti's highly unique background. As I mentioned, he was an expert in something called pre-polyphonic music. Basically, this involves the intense study of archaic sound waves, analyzing exactly how acoustic energy travels, how it transforms, and how it interacts with the atmosphere over immense stretches of time. It was actually this highly specific, deep obsession with ancient sound that led Ernetti to formulate a completely shocking scientific theory about both sound and light waves.
Ernetti relied heavily on a foundational law of physics that you might remember from high school, the conservation of energy, which dictates that energy cannot be created or destroyed. He argued that sound and light waves, which are essentially the visual and auditory evidence of historical events, do not simply vanish into nothingness once an event is over. Instead, they transform. He theorized that every single word ever spoken and every shadow ever cast leaves a permanent, albeit totally invisible imprint on our atmosphere. He called this remaining energetic signature an electronic echo or a psychic residue.
Think of it like a stone being thrown into a perfectly still pond. When the stone hits the water, it creates a violent impact. The energy from that impact ripples outward, slowly fading as it moves further and further away, until eventually the pond looks completely still again. To our eyes, the event is over. But Ernetti argued for a third phase, the atomic residue. Even when the water appears totally calm, the kinetic energy from that original splash hasn't disappeared from the universe. It is merely transformed and dispersed, leaving a permanent imprint in the surrounding environment.
As researchers worldwide analyzed Ernetti's claims, they fixated on this exact concept.
There's a great quote from the international coverage of this theory which translates to, "But at the atomic level, the energy of this splash is still there." And that is absolutely crucial to understand. The machine was theoretically designed to track that exact atomic permanence. Because if the energy is still there, just floating in the atmospheric residue of the Earth, then theoretically, a sensitive enough instrument could scoop up and reassemble those invisible ripples right back into the original splash.
So how did they supposedly build this thing? Remember, we aren't talking about sleek modern computers or microchips. This was the 1950s. The hardware was supposedly a massive, complex, room-sized array of glowing cathode tubes, heavy physical dials, sensitive transducers, antennas that were forged from very specific, rare precious metal alloys. Ernetti claimed that by physically manipulating these dials and aligning these specific alloys, the team could literally tune into the energetic frequencies of historical figures. Just like turning the dial on an old radio to find a specific station through the static, they were tuning into the specific atmospheric residue of past events.
Section 3. Tuning into ancient history.
Let's dive right into the timeline of their alleged successes, taking this straight from Ernetti's own journals. According to him, they started relatively small, just calibrating the machine. First, they tuned into the early 20th century, successfully locking onto the energetic frequency of Mussolini's speeches. Once they realized it actually worked, they confidently pushed the dial further back, peering into the 19th century to observe the era of Napoleon. Building incredible momentum, they jumped way back to 1690 BC. Ernetti claimed they actually watched and transcribed a completely lost tragedy by the Roman poet Ennius. And finally, they reached deep, deep into antiquity, claiming to have witnessed the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments being carved on Mount Sinai. It was, if true, an unprecedented window into the most pivotal moments of human history.
But right at the height of their success, a terrifying question emerged. Was the Chronovisor really just a passive observer? Because the more they used this incredible machine, the more they realized something was deeply, terribly wrong.
Section 4. The Chronometron Core.
You see, during their incredibly deep historical dives, the central component of their machine, a part known as the chronometron core, began acting up. It started picking up rogue, anomalous signals that absolutely should not have been there. It wasn't just random static or atmospheric interference either. As Ernetti noted in his journals with growing terror, it was as if someone else, from somewhere else in history, was actively looking back at them through the void.
Section 5. The Templar Time Frequency.
The most crucial turning point occurs when Ernetti and his team decided to focus the Chronovisor on one of history's greatest, most enduring unsolved mysteries. Their target era, the early 14th century. They wanted to witness the sudden, violent, and highly suspicious destruction of the Knights Templar. So, they set their heavy dials, adjusted the alloy antennas, and peered deep into the dark cathedrals of the past to uncover the truth.
Their expected observation was pretty straightforward. They thought they would simply watch a historical event unfold, exactly like they did with Napoleon or Mussolini. But the anomaly they actually encountered was staggering. The machine didn't just show passive images of the Templars. Instead, the chronometron core began to violently hum, and it was humming at the exact same energetic frequency as the chronometron itself.
When the machine perfectly matched frequencies with the 14th century, a terrifying realization dawned on the team. The Templars hadn't just found ancient gold or holy relics during their crusades in Jerusalem, they had somehow discovered the very same principles of time viewing that Fermi and von Braun were using in the 1950s. And the Templars were actively using this ancient mastery of frequency to jam the signal, to shield and hide their legacy from future observers. Ernetti's logs strongly hint that the Vatican didn't shut down the Chronovisor project because the machine was a failure. No, they shut it down permanently to cover up the fact that the Templars possessed this totally impossible technology centuries ago.
Which leaves us with a final, chilling question to ponder. If the Knights Templar truly understood the physics of time viewing, if they actually had their own version of a chronometron humming away in the dark cathedrals of the 14th century, what else were they hiding in the dark corridors of history? And perhaps more importantly, who else might be looking back at us right now? Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I hope this structured look at Ernetti's impossible lens gave you a fascinating new perspective on one of the Vatican's strangest alleged secrets.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're opening the vault on what is honestly one of the most fascinating and kind of bizarre archival investigations we've ever covered in this explainer. We're looking at a piece of alleged technology that, if it's actually real, completely rewrites our understanding of history, of physics, and of the deepest, darkest secrets locked away inside the Vatican. We're talking about a machine that wasn't designed to calculate numbers or manufacture goods, but to literally capture history exactly as it happened. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and lock in. We're going to break down the mechanics, the absolute genius mastermind behind it, and the frankly chilling final discovery of the machine known as the Chronovisor. Our story actually kicks off with a massive, undeniable public shockwave. Picture this. It's May 2nd, 1972, and the incredibly popular Italian magazine La Domenica del Corriere hits the newsstands. But it's carrying a headline that absolutely stopped the entire nation right in its tracks. And it wasn't just the headline, right? It was the image printed right there inside. The article displayed this very grainy, black and white photograph of a man's face. He's agonizing in pain, crowned with thorns. Now, the publication confidently claimed this was not a painting, it wasn't some artistic recreation or a clever hoax. They reported, completely deadpan, that it was a direct, photographic snapshot straight from the year 33 AD. An actual, literal image of Jesus Christ during his final moments on the cross. I know. It sounds like pure science fiction, maybe a bit of sensationalism. But the source of this claim, the people backing it up, is what makes it so incredibly compelling for us to analyze today. Part 1. The Mastermind and the Dream Team. See, the architect behind this impossible photograph wasn't some fringe conspiracy theorist looking for a quick payday. He wasn't a sci-fi novelist writing a pulpy book. His name was Father Pellegrino Ernetti. He was a Benedictine monk, an absolute world-class authority on archaic music, and crucially, a highly respected physicist. But according to the source material we've combed through, he didn't build this machine alone in some damp, dark monastery basement. Ernetti claimed he worked in absolute secrecy for decades, and he did it with an absolute dream team of 12 world-renowned scientists. We're talking heavy hitters here. Guys like Enrico Fermi, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who literally created the world's first nuclear reactor. Yeah, him. And Wernher von Braun, the undisputed father of modern rocket science. Alongside 9 other elite, unnamed scientists, they supposedly pooled their massive intellects. So this wasn't just some religious endeavor. This was an incredibly high-stakes, heavily resourced scientific black project that perfectly intersected with Vatican secrecy. So what exactly did this scientific dream team actually build? Well, they called their creation the Chronovisor, and it is absolutely vital to understand right off the bat that this was not a time machine. At least, not in the way Hollywood usually depicts it. You couldn't just step into a sleek metal pod, hit a button with some spinning lights, and physically arrive in ancient Rome. No one was physically transported anywhere. Instead, you have to think of it as a window. A very dangerous, highly theoretical lens built to peer straight through the very fabric of time. Its sole purpose was to act as a passive observer. It was designed to capture the actual energy echoes of every single word ever spoken and every shadow ever cast throughout all of human history. When you really stop and think about what that would actually mean for our understanding of reality, it's just absolutely staggering. Part 2. The Physics of Ghosts. Now, to grasp how a lens like this was even theoretically possible, we have to look back at Father Ernetti's very unique academic background. Like I mentioned, he was an expert in what's called pre-polyphonic music. So Ernetti spent years obsessively studying exactly how sound travels. His deep, fundamental understanding of acoustics heavily influenced a set of shocking theories that would ultimately form the bedrock of the entire Chronovisor project. It all led to his core concept, which he called psychic residue. Ernetti asserted that based strictly on the fundamental law of the conservation of energy, which tells us energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? Sound and light waves do not ever actually vanish. They just don't disappear into nothingness. According to Ernetti, these waves simply transform. This means every word ever spoken, every visual event that has ever occurred leaves a permanent, completely invisible electronic imprint or echo coding our environment. It's just sitting there in the atmosphere, waiting to be accessed if you have the right tools. To explain these highly complex physics to lay people, Ernetti used a very simple, elegant analogy. Walk through these steps with me for a second. Step 1. Imagine a stone being thrown into a perfectly calm pond. That stone entering the water represents our historical event. Step 2. The stone hits the water, and the resulting ripples expand outward. Eventually, they fade and fade until the water looks completely still to the naked eye. The event seems entirely gone. But then we hit step 3, which is where the genius of his theory really shines. On a purely atomic level, the energy that created that initial splash hasn't been deleted from the universe. It remains permanently in place, forever altering the atomic structure of that pond. There's this one specific phrase, pulled from a translated Ukrainian archival source we reviewed, that perfectly encapsulates the entire project. It reads, "But at the atomic level, the energy of this splash is still there." Finding this quote in a Ukrainian archive really highlights the incredible global breadcrumb trail of evidence surrounding the story. It shows just how far these theories actually traveled. The Chronovisor wasn't creating fake images out of thin air. According to the designers, it was simply a highly advanced instrument designed to detect those invisible, microscopic ripples of energy left behind by past events. It was quite literally a machine built to read the permanent atmospheric record of humanity. Okay, but how do you actually read an energetic ripple from 1,000 years ago? The source texts get super specific here, detailing a massive, highly complex physical array. This thing wasn't small. It relied heavily on banks of glowing cathode tubes, incredibly sophisticated transducers, and specialized antennas crafted from very specific, precious metal alloys. Ernetti claimed that by using these materials, alongside a series of dials, the team could effectively tune the machine. Think of it just like tuning an old FM radio in your car. They could turn the dials and lock onto the exact, unique, energetic frequency of a specific historical person or a specific event. They were basically isolating one single ripple from the infinite, chaotic ocean of time. Part 3. Piercing the Veil of Time. With the theory mathematically sound in their eyes and the physical machine fully constructed, Ernetti's secret journals claim they finally powered it on. The timeline here charts the incredible, almost unbelievable escalation of their experiments. In the very beginning, they played it safe. They started small just to test the machine's calibration. They tuned into the 1930s to view a speech given by Mussolini, and when that actually worked, they pushed further back into the 1800s, successfully observing the era of Napoleon. Emboldened by the success, they took off the training wheels and leaped across millennia. Ernetti claimed the machine successfully dialed all the way back to the year 69 BC, where they actually watched a live performance of a completely lost tragedy by the Roman poet Ennius. And finally, they reached deep into biblical antiquity. They claimed to have witnessed the original stone tablets of the Ten Commandments being carved right there on Mount Sinai. They were looking further and further into the dark void of history, pulling lost moments back into the light. But as you might expect, there's a catch. The more they used the machine, the more they realized a genuinely terrifying truth. The heart of the device, a vital component they called the chronometron core, started acting completely erratically. It wasn't just acting as a passive observer anymore. The core began to pick up anomalous signals. It was actively detecting energetic frequencies that absolutely unequivocally should not have been there. It was as if, while they were peering deep into the dark corridors of history, they suddenly realized someone else was looking back at them.
Part 4. The Templar Signal.
And this brings us to where the story takes its darkest, most unexpected twist. According to the records, Ernetti decided to focus the Chronovisor on the early 14th century. He wanted to uncover the truth behind the sudden, violent destruction of the legendary Knights Templar. But when he dialed in that specific era, the machine didn't just passively show him images. The physical machine, sitting right there in a 20th century room, began to loudly hum with a frequency Ernetti instantly recognized. While the Vatican team was looking back through time using their specific machine's frequency, the 14th century was radiating the exact same chronometron frequency right back at them. The machine was getting temporal feedback from its own exact counterpart in the past. This realization literally changes everything about the narrative. Ernetti theorized that the Knights Templar hadn't just found gold or holy relics buried in the ancient ruins of Jerusalem. No, they had somehow uncovered the ancient fundamental principles of time viewing. The Vatican team wasn't the first group to invent this world-changing technology. They had merely rediscovered it. The Templars possessed the exact same technology way back in the 1300s, and they were actively emitting a frequency designed specifically to shroud their secrets. They were effectively jamming the signal, hiding their true legacy from any future observers who might try to look back and spy on them. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question to chew on. If Ernetti's accounts are accurate, and the Chronovisor was indeed a real, functioning device that tapped into the psychic residue of history, the project didn't end because it failed or broke down. It ended because the Vatican realized they had just stumbled into a temporal arms race with a secret society from the 14th century. Think about it. If you can build a window to secretly watch the past, you really have to wonder who in the past is using that exact same window to watch you. It's a fascinating concept that completely flips our understanding of history right on its head. Thank you so much for focusing in and exploring this with me today. Keep asking questions, keep studying the evidence, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.